Hey guys, Mr. Holden here. We are live at Westech. I'm trying to get the camera working right here so you guys can see. I'm wearing dark, so it's not working out very well. But I'm here, I'm live, I'm at Westech, and I want to talk to you guys about a couple things. I've got a motor up on the dyno right now. James Zip is in the stream early. I am at Westech right now. I've got a motor up on the dyno, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk to you about what's going on now, what's going to go on, all the testing that we're going to do, because we got a lot of cool stuff. We'll do question and answer at the end. We're even going to run boost on this particular motor, so you guys can all take a look. ProCharge Mopar's in the house. ProCharge Mopar, I need you to find me a 340. I need a 340 block or short block. So get all your Mopar guys out there. Looks like people are showing up. That's awesome. As you can see, one of my favorite places. Not as Westech is awesome. Obviously, I would rather be going out with Lisa, but I'm going to miss Valentine's Day because I'm going to be down here for Valentine's Day testing. So the things that I do for you guys. We're getting the dyno ready. I've got a motor up. I'm just about ready to start this thing, so I thought you guys would want to join in for the first startup, and we can go in and take a look and see what that motor is and what we're doing. I've got the L99 4.3 liter up on the dyno, and we're going to do a couple of cool things with that. I've got a bunch of stuff in there set aside so you guys can take a look at it. MCW Badass. Hey, Richard, you want to borrow my 3800 bell housing? I do. I found one down at Gear. Those guys said that they have one, and I was going to go down there and pick it up. But if somebody has one, I would be willing to buy it or ship it or whatever we got to do. I would like to have a bell housing, and I found out that I could just go buy a flywheel over at the local auto parts store. So that's an easy fix. We're still working on. I ordered the trigger wheel for it. We're going to do I think it's a 36-1, and we ordered a couple of different sizes to figure out what I need to do to bolt on to the front dampener so that we can, just use that as our trigger wheel and not have to worry about trying to reconfigure the internal one that's inside the dampener on the 3800 Series 2. We're all doing good here. The cold air needs to go away. California is actually fairly nice right now. I don't know if we're going to get rain today, but it was pretty nice. Westech Dyno Day. So let's go take a look. I'll walk you into the dyno. I'll kind of show you what's going on, what the motor is. Maybe we'll even do it. I got my fingers crossed. I just walked in the distributor kind of where it should be. Now what I'll do is I'll set number 1 at TDC. It's a little bit harder because there's no mark on that dampener and there's no indicator on the LT1, at least one that I didn't see. I used a wire, and what we did was to just kind of stick a screwdriver in there and turn it around until it was up near TDC and kind of marked it. We set the distributor in because I have a carbureted intake manifold on there on the 4.3 liter. I just set the distributor in. We have it lined up with number 1. Then I advance it, 20 or 30-ish degrees. And that's usually close enough to start it. The thing that's cool about starting up a motor is a lot of people don't realize, and especially the fuel-injected guys like your tuner will tell you, oh, the pulse width has to be exactly accurate and precise, and it needs to be measured this amount versus the displacement of the motor and the power output. And here are the 2 things that you need for a motor to start. You need 3. You need air, but you need fuel, and you need timing. And really, a motor will start if you set the distributor at 36 degrees, it will start. If you set the distributor at 0 or 5 or 10, it will still start. So in that range, the motor is still going to start. It's not going to run as good if it's not optimum, but it will still start. And the other thing is, with fuel, it just needs fuel. Forget about what the squirter is or accelerator pump on a carburetor. Forget about what the pulse width is on the EFI. I can go in there and use a squirt bottle and spray gasoline in there, and it will start. Or carb cleaner, or brake cleaner, or WD-40, or almost anything that will ignite, and the motor will start up. So it just needs the fuel, and it needs some kind of timing, and they just need to be roughly in the right amount, and the thing will start up. So after saying that, I'm probably going to start this, and then it's not going to start, and then everybody can yell at me, and I can yell at myself back and forth, and it'll be awesome. But let's go. We'll go in and take a look at the motor. I'll show you what it is, and fingers crossed, we'll see if we can get the thing running, and I'll be dyno testing it tonight with lots of stuff, carburation and fuel injection and stuff. So let's go in. I'm going to unplug my umbilical cord and see how long my battery lasts, because it lasts about 5 seconds. I definitely need a new battery for my laptop. What can you expect? It's a used Tough Book steel. So here is our motor. Let me take a look here. We have an iron-headed L99 4.3 liter V8. Still got the iron heads on it. We have a GM dual plane intake manifold that I borrowed. Thanks, Bob, for that. I've got a Holley carburetor on it. We've got headers on it. You can see we got the distributor back here, and it's kind of pointing in the right direction. We've got an MSD6AL, and then we got the coil over there. And all we need to do is get fuel to it, hopefully, fingers crossed, and we'll get that thing running. And I just want to run it and make sure that it's still okay, because I had taken the heads off of this thing. I had a little excitement today. I took one of the heads off because I flow tested it. We want to find out what the flow rate was of this particular head. So I flow tested it. So I had to put a new head gasket on, and I found out that the LT1 head is different than the L99 head. One has a bigger bore. The thicknesses, the compressed thicknesses are different. And then, like I said, the bore size. This now has LT1 head gaskets on. It has Velcros. And I think that they're a 1704 or 1740. I'll have to look that up and think. But it has new head gaskets on it. But then when I was trying to spin this thing over after putting that head back on, there was something dragging in the motor. I'm like, did I get rust in a cylinder or something? So I took the other head off. Turns out there was no rust in that cylinder. What was happening is the flywheel and the really thick drive plate that I used was actually rubbing on the inside of the bell housing. And I hadn't run across that before, and it wasn't rubbing everywhere. It was only catching on one little spot. And so I disassembled the motor to figure that out, and finally took that apart and fixed it. But so we have new head gaskets on this thing. We've got the dual plane and the carburetor on there. But here's the cool thing. So if we go over and take a look at this, that's the LT1 intake manifold, or L99, and you can see that I ran it with a distributor. That's my distributor hole. It's not very good. It's an oval and in the wrong spot and all that. But the cool thing is, my boys at TPIS sent this out, and if you'll notice, that is a tune port manifold. I don't have a plenum on there, but if you look very closely, they have welded and drilled the necessary holes to allow me to mount this tune port manifold on the L99, which is what I'm going to do. After I run it carbureted, the tune port is going on there, and we're going to find out, Andrew, yeah, $9, $9.99. I'm going to run the tune port on there, and we're going to find out how well the extra runner length works, because this L99 really needs more runner length. The short runner thing. Oh, see, I'm already running out of battery. I better get back in there, plug in. Otherwise, I'm going to lose you guys. It tells me I have 10 minutes left, and then it just shuts off. Okay, there we go. I think I saved it. Okay, so we've got the tune port set up, and it needs runner length. Like I was saying, the LT1 intake manifold or the L99 intake manifold is like 3 inches runner length. And it's terrible for this L99. The other thing that I have that I didn't show you is I also brought a TorqueStorm supercharger. So we're going to run a TorqueStorm, even though TorqueStorm does not make a kit for L99. Hopefully am I still? But they don't make a kit for the L99, but they also didn't make a kit for the 4.3 liter V6, but I just ran it anyway. So that's what I'm going to do. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to run it on here by putting a stock, a small block Chevy dampener on there. And then from there, we just bolt the kit on to the head, assuming that the bolt pattern is the same. And I think that it is. I did notice that there is a pipe plug in the way on the head, but we can grind that down or remove it or make it go flush, or you can drill a hole in the back of the plate, mount the plate on, mount the blower, get the dampener on there, put the offset and the spacer and the pulley for the TorqueStorm, and run a TorqueStorm on this, blowing through the tune port injection manifold. So that will all be cool stuff. And we're going to try a couple other heads. The other thing I didn't show you is we have a couple. Carl Jr. 2620. That's a kind of a random amount, but that is awesome. The other thing I didn't show you is I have a couple of ported cylinder heads. I have some LT1, or at least have one set of ported LT1 cylinder heads. They're aluminum, and as opposed to the iron ones. They're also ported, and they're also milled because we wanted to change. We didn't want to lose all the compression because an LT1 has a bigger chamber than an L99 does, because the L99 is designed for the little bore. So it has a small chamber. So we're going to run the ported aluminum heads. I have a couple of other cams. We have the tune port manifold that we're going to run, and I have the blower. So that should give us a lot of information on the L99, what it takes to make it work. And then after that, the L99 is going to get set aside, and I'm going to go get an LT1 and run that. Now, the other thing I want to mention, if there anybody out there is looking for a set of LT1 iron heads, I have a set of those that we're just going to get rid of for a couple $100, $250 or $300. The nice thing about them is that they have they've been drilled and tapped for rocker studs, and they also have LT4 springs on them. So if you want to upgrade your iron LT1 heads, which work very well and make good power, I've got another set. If you want them, I'll sell them cheap. The other thing we're doing, I want to put the LT1 up. We'll run a few mods on the LT1. We'll try ported heads. We'll try cams, and we'll do a few things with it. There's a lot of information out there actually on LT1s, and we'll probably run boost on the LT1 as well. But I want to get through that stuff fairly quickly, because then I want to do a big video on swapping the internals. So I want to run through this testing on this, run through the testing on the LT1. Then we can get to swapping the internals and making a Gen 2 DZ302, and then making a stroker version of the L99, which will come out to about 305 cubic inches. So both of those will be cool. The 305 going from 4.3 liter to a 5 liter, more power, so that would be a good way to go. And as you guys will probably find out, going from a 5.7 liter down to a 5 liter 302 is not actually the way to go. It's going to end up making less power. So hopefully, and hopefully I'm not the connection's is not great here. So hopefully you guys aren't having too much of a trouble with that. So if you guys have any questions, we can try to start it, I guess, and see how that works out. We'll see if we can get it started and running. I guess we're kind of ready. I'm going to go close this door real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, everybody out there got their fingers crossed? This doesn't always work out. So I'll go ignition. We got our fuel pump on. Okay. We got water in there. We got fuel in there. Turn our fan on. It's loud. Couple of pumps here on the carburetor, and here's crossed. Yay! Look at that. See, I told you, it just has to be close. I have no idea where the timing is right now. I just know we set it in and gave it a little bit of extra. We gave it a couple pumps on the fuel. We filled the fuel bowls up. It's got about 7 pounds of fuel pressure to the carburetor. So obviously we're fairly close, because it's idling at 1300. So what we'll do is after I go in and got to hook up the O2 sensor, get it running, turn that on, and then I'll go and adjust the idle mixtures on the carburetor. Not that I care too much really about the idle and stuff, but take a look. It's alive. It's running. And we have, you can see we got oil pressure. We got 60 pounds of oil pressure. That's all good. There's our screen. That's kind of what we like to hear, especially after I take it apart and put it back together. It's almost like I knew what I was doing. Okay, so that's alive. That's good. Like that. I can't get that to come back in. So let's see. Let's get to some question and answers. I haven't seen you guys for a couple of days because I had to drive down here and we were doing a bunch of stuff last night. I was actually flow testing a bunch of overheads and stuff. You know, keep them busy. So what do we got here? Chops wants to see we need a 5.7 LT1 stock bottom end turbo torture test. So we want to see a big bang LT1 then, right? I did start it, Dave. Come on, be a little bit patient there. let's see here. Okay. What's the max horsepower you recommend for an early LS1 383 turbo application running E85? We don't usually run more than 1,000 horsepower on those aluminum blocks, especially that LS1. It's got pretty thin walls on it. And I don't know that I would go to a 383 if you're going to do a turbo motor anyway, because you don't really need to. It'll help spool the turbo and stuff, and if you've already got that stuff, it will definitely make good power. But you can make lots of power with just the turbo. So. But I like I said, 1,000 horsepower seems to be about where we stop on those. Fishing Up a Storm wants to know, what is my next Ford motor build? It's probably going to be a 351, only because I want to compare a 351 to a 360 Dodge to a 350 Chevy, and so that will be, we'll do mods on that, and I think that that's going to be the next Ford thing. Get my hands on a Dodge Magnum. That's what we're going to test. Well, they will all be wrecking yard motors. So we'll get the Vortec 350, we'll get the Dodge Magnum, and then we'll get a 351 Windsor. But I'm going to upgrade the 351 Windsor with GT40 heads because they stopped making that 351. They continue to make the others and improve them. Although I don't know how great. If anybody knows how good the Dodge Magnum heads are, I don't think that those flow really that well. Admiral, we're testing a L99 4.3 liter baby LT1. Daniel wants to know who poured the LT1 heads. I had a guy port them locally here. Super Duty 455. Super Duty 455, you will be interested. I have a Pontiac coming up. I'm getting my hands on a Pontiac. So I'm actually going to do some Pontiac testing, which will be cool. I'm very excited about it. Carlos wants to know how much boost will Felpro head gaskets hold on the 5.3 liter LS. We run Felpros on a lot of the big bang stuff. So, you know, I've also run the LS9 stuff, but, you know, we've run 1,400 or more horsepower on the Felpro head gaskets. Log versus tubular turbo manifolds always seems to be an ongoing debate. Yeah, ProCharge Mopar. The Magnum heads are pretty good if you let Dulcich work on them. He really is good at those. But we want to run stock ones to begin with, obviously. Jody, I don't know what the head flow is yet on the ported ones. Those weren't the heads I was testing last night. The 292 is being fixed, and it was supposed to be here when I got here, but it's not done yet. What are my thoughts on the Ford 7.3 liter? I think it's a great motor. I don't know that it's the end-all be-all, but it's big and it's got decent heads on it, and if you put a cam in it, it's going to do what that kind of thing should do. Brandon wants to know what's a good cam to use on my 6-liter Denali, trying to get around 450 to 500 horsepower. As long as that's flywheel horsepower, that's pretty easy. Take a look at there's a couple 6-liter videos up. One of them where we ran 4 different cams. One of them shows how to upgrade a 6-liter. So there's lots of different possibilities there. Even the sloppy stage 2, you'll make over 500 at the flywheel. Alan wants to know, your fuel pressure went up when you did an intake change. That seems odd, unless the intake had a different. Did the intake have a fuel pressure regulator on it, or is this deadheaded? So if you change the regulator, I can see where that could happen. Otherwise, there shouldn't be a change in pressure. Admiral wants to know any speculation on the new upcoming 6.8 liter Ford. I don't know. I'm not in the loop on the new stuff.
Eric wants to know what's a good set of budget heads for a Turbo 454. The ones that come from the wreck yard work fairly well. We've run turbo stuff on both the peanut port heads and on the later Gen 6 heads, and you can make lots of power with boost on those. Terry 671. I hope that that's a supercharger reference. Without data, it's just an opinion. I agree. I didn't show you, but on the way into the dyno, there's a sign up above that says the polygraph room. Lots of people come out with different ideas than when they went in. Eddie wants to know, did you end up getting a Barra? No, a Barra is not that high on the list right now. I like them, and I think that they're cool, and guys can make a lot of power with them, but I have a lot of other stuff that I want to test before I would do that. Frank wants an update on the K24 Big Bang. Yes, we are going to do that. I need to get, the last thing that I need to get for that now is a header, I think, because I'm not going to run the exhaust manifold that we ran before, and then I think it's ready. Jerry says a 355 Blueprint small block Chevy engine with Vortec heads, they claim 502 lift. Aftermarket Vortec heads might be able to do that. If it's a stock Vortec head, you have to change the, I think you'd run into retainer to seal clearance problems like that. They usually have to cut the guide down before you can run that much lift. Dylan wants to see a Ford 460 Big Bang. That would be cool. We have a 429. I don't have a 460. Games has a Grand National. Those are good. We do like our Grand Nationals. Cole wants to know how much does lift affect the power curve if the duration and LSA stay the same. The only test I've seen where lift has changed is Brian Tooley recently did some stuff on some low lift cams, and there wasn't a big change in power, but it would depend on a lot of other things. If you have a head that really likes head flow, and if you're running a cam that has low lift and all of a sudden you add lift to that, I've seen it make a really big difference in power. If you have a mild application and you go from, like, you have a truck cam, a stage 1 truck cam, and you go from 550 lift to 600 lift, I don't think you'll see very much. So it depends on where you're testing it. A 222, 232 cam is kind of middle of the road. So I don't know that you'd see a bunch there either, especially from 545 to 560 or to 600. Ken, what is a white number pad? I'm not familiar with that. You want to see an older 350. The one that I would want to do a Big Bang on is like an L31, which is a Vortec motor, and I want to do that because it's I think that's going to be a 4-bolt main, and it's going to be a hydraulic roller cam, and it would be I've wanted to do those since we blew a bunch of them up when we were doing the Wheel of Death series with Chad and I. So I think that's what I would do. I don't think I would do a much older one like a TunePort 1 or even before that, an L82 or an L46. Yeah, it might be freezing up. The service here, the cell service is not good. The internet connection is bad. Brett wants a direct rule of thumb for boost versus timing, and I don't have one. It's not half a pound per pound of boost, or one half a degree per pound of boost, or 1 degree per pound. Maybe guys do that. I don't do that. We put in a curve that I know works that we run on lots of turbo and supercharged stuff, and obviously it's dependent on fuel and intercooling and lots of other things. What a good what would would be a good flowing head for a 4.3 liter LT1. So this L99 probably already has enough head flow from stock, because it has a head that will support 400 horsepower or thereabouts. And it's, you know, we're obviously not there, so we're not taking advantage of everything that that head has to flow. So it will be interesting when we put a ported head on that flows more, to see if we pick power up. T-Ski, well, I want to de-stroke a 6 liter. How will I be able to do the right rod and piston combination? Well, you take the deck height, and you know what the deck height is. That's easily available online. You take the stroke divided by 2, add the rod length from center to center, and then the piston compression height, and that has to equal the deck height. And that's how you do it. Or you can look on the video that I did, and there we de-stroked one. You put a 4/8 crank in it, and I can't remember now off the top of my head how long the rod was. I can't remember off the top of my head. But we had a custom rod done, and then we had the compression height done on the piston to match the rod and the stroke length, and it all works if you just want the piston to basically be at 0 deck. Ford, for me, can you go into more detail on your Mustang? Maybe I should do a video on that Mustang, because we did a lot of stuff to it. Right now it has a Kenny Brown suspension on it, but I've never even driven it with that suspension on it. I put it on, and it didn't have a motor in it. But we've been through a few different configurations of, because I've tried back then, we tried all kinds of stuff, you know, underdrive pulleys and fuel pressure regulators and catback exhaust, and I mean basically everything. Ultimately, it had like either 8-to-1 or 8.5-to-1 Wiseco pistons on it. It had trick flow high port heads. It had the crane version of the 274 comp cam. It had a GT40, and then a ported GT40, and then a ported Cobra intake manifold on it, and it had a Vortec A trim to begin with, and then a B trim. And we had an R trim on there momentarily until I blew it up. And it had lots of different gears, and it came with a 308. We tried 273s, we tried 241s, which is a very special gear from a 3-speed Bronco application, because I was more concerned about top speed for the Silver State than I was drag racing. We tried 327s, and I don't think I ever put 355s in it. New Zealand's in the house. Always lots of good information. Stuck at home off work for a week. Injured leg. Oh, hope you're okay. Always interested in Ford 5-liter information. I've done a lot of that, and all of that was way pre-internet stuff. So I really need to get back on it. I guess lots of guys want me to test all of the Alphabet cams again, and I think Summit just came out with a bunch of theirs, and so they had talked to me about maybe testing the Alphabet cams on a 5-liter, which would be interesting. And I have one of those. I have an aluminum-headed 5-liter over in my storage, just ready to do more testing. Wayne wants to know, what are good heads for an LS3 with a BTR Stage 3 cam? Is it a BTR Stage 3 truck cam? And if you have an LS3, you already have pretty good heads on it. Take a look at the upgrade that we did, where I did the stock LS3 head versus a TrickFlow 225 cathedral port head. And the cathedral port head makes more power than a stock head. But of all the stock heads, the LS3 head, that rec port head or LY6, that one will make the most power until you go to an aftermarket setup. Mike Bell wants to know, regarding turbine housing AR, is there some rule of thumb for making a choice of the turbo? If you have several choices of AR for your turbo, you'd have to look and see what your combination is, and then decide what your power output is. Those are the two big things. And then the AR is just juggling a little bit on response rate. The response rate primarily is going to be determined by what you're running. Like if you're running a 408, you probably want a wider AR, or a bigger number, basically. You don't want a 0.68 or 0.82. You want something big, a 1.1, 1.25, 1.32, especially if you're doing a single on that. You'll want something like that. If it's a 6-liter, then you have to come down. If it's a 5.3, then you can come way down or go to a smaller turbo. There's a lot going on there that's not just AR related. Cole, $5. Let's see, Steve, for curiosity's sake, I'd like to see what kind of power a D-stroke 400 Chevy with a 327 3.25 stroke would make, as opposed to putting the 350 stroke in it. Wants to know, would you recommend porting the stock LS3 heads? I would not. Very few combinations, especially if it's only a 6-liter or 6.2, can take advantage of what that stock head already flows 315 CFM. So it flows enough to support way over 600 horsepower. So if you're not making that yet, that's because the combination is wrong, or not wrong. It's just not, there's not enough motor there to take advantage of what that head has to offer. We made almost 700 on a really big motor with a stock LS3 head. So that tells you how much power they can support. Ported heads may get you a little bit, but if you look at the LS3 head test that I did, the video that's up, you'll see it takes a lot of motor to get extra power past the stock ones that already work pretty well. I have a stock LM4. How can I make more power going into a 77 Camaro? Your best bet for all of that stuff is a cam. Cam and springs are the first thing that you should do on any LS application, whether it's a 4.8, a 5.3, 6.0, 6.2, whatever it is, even a 7-liter. The cam is the first thing because they have most everything else. And then boost obviously works really good. An eBay GT45 turbo is a good turbo if you are looking for something in the 700 to 750 horsepower flywheel range. If you want more than that, then you need to go bigger. Admiral, $2 Chuck, what's up? Let's just dyno every motor and call it good. I'm working on it. I run a lot of them, but there's always more out there, and then they make new ones, so I have to do the new ones, assuming that I can get my hands on some of those. What would be a good option for an LS swap Cayman road race build? A D-stroke LS7? Honestly, I don't know why you would D-stroke the LS7. Just run the LS7. You've got plenty of RPM. You've got plenty of power. It will run to 7,500 RPM. You don't have to change the stroke on it to get it to do that. Just make the oiling system good, make the valve train good, and then have like lots of extra power. David wants me to do a video on a Vortec 5.7 liter. I have a couple up there that we did, but what specifically do you want to see? The thing that you can't do really is I can't run the factory Vortec, that Spider fuel injection, because it's terrible. I mean, it works good on a stock motor, and there are lots of guys running around with it, but it's not ideal when you go to make modifications. That motor minus the fuel injection is actually a pretty good motor. It's got good heads. It's got a hydraulic roller cam. You can put more camshaft in it. And then, you know, you can make pretty good power because those are pretty decent heads. Karen Abstract, have you ever tested? I'm thinking you missed a B, and they're an eBay billet GT45. I haven't tested a billet one. Yes, I agree, Admiral. A dealer to send me crate motors. I have done a few crate motors from the guys at Gandrid Chevrolet have given me some good deals on some stuff, and so I love those guys. And you know, the crate motors are nice because they're not all greasy and crusty and everything, and they work and they run and they do all the things that they're supposed to do, which is always a good starting point. So I had an LS3 from them that I ran, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of tests with, and it works really well. And we ran a bunch of stuff on it. We ran blowers on it, turbos on it, nitrous. Different heads, different cams, you know, you name it, and that thing just kept going, which is a testament to how much development and work that guys from GM put in, because those motors are basically motors that are pulled off the assembly line, and it was a Corvette version, so they work really, really well, especially with extra ring gap and boost. They work really well. David wants to know what's a good upgrade over a Spider injection. Well, we were normally run it carbureted, but there are other fuel injected options for you. I think Edelbrock has probably a single plane intake, which I wish guys had dual plane intakes with port injection on them. That would work really good. Ken says he didn't hear your comment on the weigh number pad blocks. I don't know what that is. I don't know what a weigh number pad block is. Strain TV, should I use a stock 5.3 truck intake or a TBSS for boost? I'm looking for 550 horsepower. That's easily done with a truck intake. If you have a cammed 5.3, you're going to have trouble not making that much power. You'll have to turn the boost way down to do that, because even on a stock motor, like if we run a bone stock 5.3 on the engine dyno, especially if we run it with the E85 and an intercooler and we run 10 pounds on it, it's going to make about 600 or maybe even a little more. So that's going to be 500 at the tire, and that doesn't even have a cam in it. Julius from Australia, what's up? I'm assuming that's what the A is. Yeah, Admiral, I see you want to run the new Coyotes and the new LT4 crate motors. Now, all that stuff is really good. It's hard to convince people to send $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 crate motors so that Richard can do a video on it. They haven't really got behind that yet. I need to have videos that have 40 million views. Then they would jump on the bandwagon. Ian wants to know if I've made my own turbo. No, no, I don't do that. Animal TBS, $15. You gotta have a good question. Chris wants to know, compared to my original 4.6 or 2-valve NA build, would you build it differently now with the availability of trick flow heads? It depends on what kind of power and whether I was going to have a power adder. If I was going to run a turbo on it, I probably wouldn't get trick flow heads. I would get ported stock heads. I would put cams in it. I like the PI heads on the non-PI short block, especially if you're going to do an NA one. If I was going to do boost, I would just go get a PI motor from the wrecking yard, port the heads, put cams in it. And honestly, I don't even know that I would port the heads now with boost, because I think that we could make enough power with cams and springs, just like you do on an LS with a 4.6 2-valve, and then just turn the boost up. We've done 700 or 800 horsepower 2-valve motors and it's not terribly difficult. Happy Kilmore, untouched 706 heads on a cammed LS1. Is a fast intake worth it? A fast intake is only probably going to be worth about 15 or so on that. Tyler wants me to make a Pro Charger out of a turbo. So you want me to attach some sort of drive mechanism to the impeller? It's easier really just to go get a Pro Charger. Ms. Ray, ever experimented with a 6.1 Hemi? I have. We've run 6.1 Hemis on here. I've run them with Kenny Bells and run them NA, ran them with Kenny Bells. Westech has run a bunch from customers and stuff. I have a 6.1 block that I have a stroker assembly for that I want to put together. I just haven't done it yet. So I did lots of testing for the book with 6.1 stuff as well. TPV Productions, what was the first motor you put a turbo on? I think it's going to have to, it probably would have to have been a 5-liter Ford, I think, if I remember right. I think it was. I think it was a 5-liter. Saying TV's doing the fist bumps. What's up? $2.99. Mark McMillan, how about a Mopar 440 Big Bang? How much will a stock 440 take? Single or twins on it before it blows. The thing about a 440 is, the thing that I'm worried about on 440s is all the ones that we get are all like late 70s ones from motorhomes, and the piston's so far down in the hole, I would be concerned about detonation on those with the piston being so far down. Maybe it wouldn't be a big deal, but it'd be much better to have something that was at zero deck. But then you're cheating because you're changing that. I just don't know what effect that would have. I know that
one of the problems with the 440, and we would fix that on a big bang deal like we did with the LS, is it needs better heads on it. So it would need trick flow heads or Indy heads or something else to get the thing to make decent power NA before we add boost to it, because I like to do that. Oh, Julius wants to know what we're working on. I did a walk around. We have an L99 iron 4.3 liter, the little LT1 version, and I showed that we have the tune port manifold. Right now it's carbureted. We're going to run the tune port on it. We're going to run some cams. I've got a set of ported aluminum LT1 heads, and I have a Torque Storm supercharger. So we got lots of stuff going on there, and we just did the first startup on it, and I'm so happy that it started, because this all could have went terribly. It could have blown up. You know, all kinds of bad things could have happened. Jamil, 4.3 liter V6 supercharged. That video is up. We did the I did the Torque Storm on the 4.3 liter V6. As a matter of fact, it's this kit that I ran on that 4.3 liter V6. Now we're running on this 4.3 liter V8, and I've already run it on other small blocks. Carlos, 999. You gotta come out in with a question, man. You gotta hit it hard. Baltimore Supreme, you can get Vortex spiders with 42 or 60-pound injectors. That would be cool. Has anybody ever tried to run boost on one of those spider intake manifolds? Frankie wants to know, is it worth trying to upgrade connecting rods on a twin turbo LP4 if you're trying to make 1,000 plus? We've done that level. I've made endless runs around 1,000 horsepower on the 6-liter LY6 with stock Gen 4 rods. So they'll last a long time. Forged rods are always a good idea, but the stock stuff will work. And we ran, I know we ran more than 100 runs, even on the Gen 3 rods, on the 4.8 and the 5.3 and the first 6.0. So they'll last a long time as long as the tune is right. Yes, Mark, you keep saying Mopar 440 Big Bang. We understand that. I just went over that. Let's see. Could I ask quickly, what is the equivalent of a GTX 3582 in terms of millimeter? I don't know what you're asking for. Does anybody know what the inducer and exducer size is on a GT3582R? I guess specifically that GT40X. You should be able to, if that's an actual Garrett turbo and not a clone turbo, if that's an actual Garrett, you can go online to the Garrett website and they'll give you all the specs on the turbo. If it's a clone one, then we'd have to measure it. Terry would like to see a test of big block Chevy rec port intake on an oval port head. We've done that a lot. Our rec port intakes are cheap at swap meets, and I have done this many times. It works well, and a lot of the factory marine stuff, the Mercury Marine stuff, is actually like that. It's a rec port intake on an oval port head. I have not. TVP wants to know if I've ever built a quad 4 engine. I have not. I saw that one on that 442, which I wanted the whole car really, really badly, but I did not get that motor because I think because the car was in such good shape, I'm 99% certain that the motor was bad, but it could have been good too, and this could have been a situation where the thing was repossessed or stolen or whatever, and that's why it was in the wrecking yard. I didn't try to turn it over. I probably should have. Yes, a Coyote Big Bang, Dan, a Coyote Big Bang is still in the works. Just wanted to know if I knew that there was a block that can take the FE Ford platform over 500 cubic inches. Is it who makes it? Is it Pond, or who makes the block for the FE? And does somebody have an FE head that will support that many cubic inches?
Here's a question. If buying heads and cam, do you buy a full cam kit, bare heads, or just a cam and use the springs that come with the assembled aftermarket heads? If you buy heads, like if you buy Airflow Research heads, they come with good springs on them already. So you don't have to get a cam kit that has the springs in it. That head will already have it. Trick flow heads, Edelbrock heads, a lot of those will already have that. But just make sure, because a lot of times the head manufacturers have different spring kits available for specific cams. They have stuff for flat tappets, hydraulic rollers. Some guys even have solid roller stuff. So check with the head manufacturer to make sure you're getting the right spring kit. Adam wants to know, what about the DZ43 build? That's coming after we do this. After we run through the series of tests on this L99, I'm going to go through a series of tests on the LT1, and then we can start swapping. Then we can do Freaky Friday. Ira wants to know, shouldn't you always put the correct spring with the cam? You need to have, yes, the right spring is important. If you can have too much spring rate, and you can have too little spring rate, and you can have the right amount of spring rate, you want to have the right amount. I've done tests with springs, and there is power in springs. There's also stability, and you can get really, really technical with spring oscillation, and having the spring perfectly matched to the cam. That becomes more and more important as you go higher in RPM. If you have a 6,500 RPM motor, there's lots of spring choices that will work in that RPM range with lots of different camshafts. So it's less precise when you're doing that than it is if you're trying to go 8,500, 9,500, 10.5. Yeah, the actual Garrett stuff is there. Those are really good turbos, and they have all the data to support it, so you kind of know what you're getting. Dave S., have you ever built a modern Chevy 302 using an L99 crank and a 4-inch bore roller block? That's what we're talking about. That's what's going to happen here. That was what all of this started and why it started. The L99 test was the start of that, and then the LT1, and then we're going to pop out the block and crank and pistons and put them in each other's blocks to make one of them will be a 302. The 5.7 block will be a 302. And this L99, the 4.3 block, will be a 305 when we mix and match the internals. Baltimore Supreme, LS cams that require springs, you recommend that, or should you go bigger? It depends on what kind of RPM you want. They recommend the LS6 spring because the cam is less than 550 lift. There's more to it than that. Like if you have a 550 lift, it has 275 degrees of duration at 50 and wants to run at 8,500 RPM, that LS6 spring is probably not going to be enough. But if it's a 6,500 RPM motor and you have a 550 lift cam and it's a 224 or 227, you probably can get away with that LS6 spring. We like putting some other kind of beehive spring on it, like a 26-918 comp, or PAC has stuff. Other people have upgraded springs, but there are a lot of cams that you can get by with that LS6 spring because it's cheap. Let's see, do you want a Buick 215 or a Rover 3500? Would you test one of those? Some of those are hard to hook up to the dyno, but a Buick 215 would be cool. But I have some other engines that I'm going to pick up actually on the way back. As a matter of fact, the gentleman that loaned me the 4-barrel intake manifold for this has a couple of really cool motors, and we'll talk about that on another video. Wow, that's harsh. Harsher on the Chrysler 4.7 liter. A Chrysler 4.7 big bang can be done on in your driveway, man. Dixie Country Auto Body wants to see the Chrysler 4.7 big bang. Tyler wants to know, with a cam that's supposed to maximize airflow of stock heads, is there any benefit to porting the heads or just slowing the airspeed? No, it doesn't work like that. If you port the heads, you can support more power. There is no cam that will maximize the power from the stock head and then be worse with a ported head. If it's maximizing the power from the stock head, it wants more flow and will make more power with a higher flowing head. Especially like on a cathedral port, it's pretty easy to get almost everything out of a cathedral port head, and then a ported cathedral port head usually will add lots of power. It's harder to do that on an LS3 because the level is so high. You can make 600 horsepower with a stock LS3 head pretty easily. What about a torture test on a factory 5.7 block, just the block? Now, I don't know how we do a torture test on it unless I just hit it with a sledgehammer. Oh, Adam wants a DZ302, but a V6. It's not going to rev then. Sorry, Officer Ossifer, you want the Ford inline 6? Yes, I definitely want to do the inline Ford, a 4.9 liter. What would you look for in a road race cam versus a street strip cam for an LS9? The road race cam would be, are you taking off?
I don't want to interrupt your...
Oh, that's okay.
All right, so Troy's sick, you know this.
He is?
He is.
Okay.
Stay away from Troy.
All right.
He's gonna get tested.
All right, stay away from Troy. A road race cam versus a street strip cam, they would be pretty similar in my opinion. You might want a little bit more top end on a strip cam, especially if you're running in a narrow RPM range. Road racers tend to run at a little bit bigger RPM range, so I might be more interested in whatever that range is. And then, but it's hard to cam the motor to go, okay, I want to make power from 3,000 to 6,500. And on a drag race car, you know, if you take a look at the video where I ran a 224, a 227, and the 231 at 50 cam, all on the same motor. And so if you look at the results of those, you know, most of the curve was the same. At the very top was one making more power than the other. And I think that you could use those three cams on a street strip motor and on a road race motor, because most of the curve was the same. Keith Darton's SB2 V6 is awesome. Yeah, their guys made a lot of power from the V6s back in the day, especially when they were running them. They were running 5-liter versions in one of the Busch Grand National motors, I think, were running that size V6, and they made lots of power with them. If you apply the talent that those guys have to any kind of combination, and they within a given amount of rules, make lots of power. You just have to make really good heads for them. And you have the displacement. You put a really big cam shift in it, put a good intake manifold on it, and it makes good power. That's what they'll do. Have I tested a 54 471 11 cam? 54 it's probably bigger than a 469 cam. I'm assuming it's too bigger. And so for a street LS3, that's going to be kind of big. You're definitely going to need a converter and stuff if it's an automatic. And it'll have you'll know that you have a cam in it. The Coyote Big Bang is still in the works, Dan. Let's see, FIS A84 S484 Turbo, would you run it on a 396 LT AFR 247 head with a stock bottom on LT1 ported stock heads?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what the combination is. All it is the combination makes NA power, and then the turbo multiplies that NA power. So whatever you're doing with that combination, a 396 LT1 is already a good start. It has good heads on it. I'm assuming that it has a decent camshaft in it. So that combination is probably going to make fairly good power, NA. And then when you add boost to it, and that turbo is certainly big enough to do 4-digit power level stuff, so it'll be fairly easy for you to get there. Fire Bride 23 is heading off. You've had enough, huh? Yeah, the 22R, I like the little Toyota motors. What camshaft would you prefer for my 01 Ford Mustang? Camshaft is way subjective. What I like and what you like are different things. For a 2-valve, I'd put the smallest comp cam in, the 262, because I like mild cams, and the trade-off between going to a 274, 270, or 278 cam, I had a 274 in my Mustang, but the idle quality and stuff was not that great, and I didn't get enough more extra power to offset that, in my opinion, and I wanted to add boost to it anyway. So Eli wants a new cam for his 417L3 with ported heads. He wants a rowdy cam. Talk to the guys at Brian Tooley. You know, you can stick a stage 4 or something in there, and it will make a lot of power. Have you done much with a 3S GTE? I have not. There are a lot of motors that I would want to run. Some of the stuff I've run on chassis dynos. Some stuff we can't hook up on the engine dyno, so you know, we don't want to do that. We can't do that in a lot of cases. Julius, what are you doing? Any recommendation on cams for a C-headed 5.4 trying for an operation range of 55 to 75? Currently have a Crowd 254, 254, 115, 435 lift, but not enough for the current turbo build. You can talk to the MMR guys or Sean Hyland, but I would try to get a hold of Mahovitz. He has tested a lot of cams on his stuff, and I don't know that you would want a single pattern in that. I think maybe you would want a dual pattern on that. And I think that he's running more than 435 lift in his stuff. Fernando has a 5.7 Hemi 2008. Take a look at the new comp. What are they? The LST offerings. A stage 1 probably for that, or maybe a stage 2. The 3S GTE is the 350 of the 2-liter turbo world. Scott wants my thoughts on a Holley EFI for an old 350. If it's an old 350 and you don't have to do emissions or anything, I would put a carburetor on it. You're not going to gain enough from the cost and complexity of a fuel injection compared to a carburetor on a like a typical small block 350. What are my thoughts on a 396 427 big block Chevy Forge crank RPM limit? I don't know what the RPM limit. The RPM limit usually isn't the strength thing having to do with the crankshaft. The RPM limit is almost always an oiling problem. It's an oiling problem after it is a valve train problem. I don't think you're going to spin the crank too fast and break the crank. I think what's going to happen is you're going to lose oiling, or your valve train is not going to be working, and that's going to cause problems. When junkyard turbos are appropriate for an L99? Yeah, there are turbos that you can get there. Volvo stuff or Saab stuff. Might be Mercedes too.
A couple of Dodge turbos would be good. A couple of, you know, SVO turbo or the T-Bird turbo stuff, if you can ever find any of that stuff. But the thing is, with junkyard turbos anymore, back in the day, that was really a good thing to do. But with the turbos on eBay and the offshore stuff, it's so cheap that I don't know how you wouldn't just put one of those on there. Luis, happy to help. Get some whole set turbos. I have run some whole set turbos before. We ran some way back from the guys at HP Performance on the 5-liter stuff, although they weren't turbos though. What's the more economical turbo kit for an 0857 Hemi? That's the one that you build yourself. You get a DNA turbo or a S475, even that's a little bit more money, and all you have to do is run the stock exhaust manifolds into a Y pipe and put a wastegate on it, and you can make your own turbo kit. I don't usually test kits from manufacturers because we always have to make it work on the dyno. So I ended up just building stuff and just running turbos on it. Happy Kilmore, do you think a Pro Charger is worth the extra cost over a Torque Storm? It depends on your power level. If you want 700 horsepower or so or less, the Torque Storm works good. If you want 1,000 horsepower, then you have to get a Pro Charger or twin Torque Storm kits, which they have also. Joseph wants to know a stock block 351 Windsor on boost. Would it be safe at 400 cubic inches? If you're going to run boost on a 351, you don't need the cubic inches. You can make more power with the turbos on a 351, especially if you did head cam and intake on it. You can make more power than the motor will stand, and having a 408 is not going to help you. So if your goal is, let's say, to make 1,000 horsepower, you can easily do that at 351 inches. It doesn't have to be a 408. You can make it on the standard size displacement. Do LS motors have excessive blow-by and high power applications? That hasn't been my experience. Even when we add a bunch of ring gap, the blow-by is not excessive. Yes, I agree. 316, a well-tuned carburetor. That's what I meant. And it's the same thing as a well-tuned carburetor is the same thing as a well-tuned EFI. You want them both to be working correctly before you can compare them. Dix County wants to know when we'll see the Nova project again. We'll see it when I bring it down to Westech. Although I might do some more. It's been fairly warm, so I might do some stuff at home. But it's just going to be painting and weather stripping and that kind of stuff. I don't have any. It's hard for me to work at home because I don't have the tools that I have here at Westech. So I want to do the suspension, for instance, but I'd have to go buy all of the stuff to make it work. It's a lot easier if I bring the Nova down here. Then I can get everything done. Have you ever used Restore engine treatment? I haven't. I have used Marvel Mystery Oil, though. .7. Julia says a 5.7 won't fail below 1,000 horsepower. The block is not the factor. That's true. It doesn't limit power, and we wouldn't know without going well into the 1,500 horsepower range. I've never taken an aluminum LS1 or LS2 or LS3 block, if that's what we're talking about, unless we're talking about a Hemi. I've never taken one of those blocks to a destruction point. I'm just going by what other people have done. I usually don't go more than about 1,000 horsepower. We've gone to 1,100, but only, you know, doing a quick dyno run is probably not that hard on it. We use the iron blocks on the LS stuff to make lots of power, and a lot of that is because they're more readily available. I'm not going to go find an LS1 or an LS2 or an LS3 in the wrecking yard. I won't do it. Lots and lots of iron truck blocks though, because they made millions of them. Or the other thing that you can find that works really well is the L33 or the LC9 block. Mario wants to know the best place to get a turnkey 5.7 liter TBI. That's from the wrecking yard is where I would get it. Do I think Wisco would be a good NA piston for a 460? Yes, Wisco makes really good stuff. Yeah, fairly warm, 30 degrees C here. Yeah, that's pretty cold. I've never tried running whole sets that are that big, 140 millimeter turbo. That's gigantic. Minus 40 Celsius here. Where do you guys live, in Siberia? Fascist Pendant, good night. And don't forget to like before leaving. Yes, everybody needs to like. It's already been more than an hour. Man, I got to get going. It's after 8. I got to get back to dyno testing. So I have 1 or 2 more minutes, and then I'll try to answer a couple quick questions, and then I got to get going. Have you done any testing on the iron heads from a 99 LQ4? No, I had a set. They came off of Chad's motor, and that was the Chad's motor was the Gen 3 6-liter Big Bang that I did that we made 1,482 horsepower. But we took those heads off and threw them away. I've never run the iron heads on anything. An LSX block is stronger than an LS3 block. An LSX block is an aftermarket block offered by GM. So it's much stronger than a factory LS3 block. Ken says he used to like watching your channel until you said something stupid about taking a sledgehammer to a 5.7 liter block. Minus 10 in Montana, probably minus 30 overnight. That is pretty cold. That's a lot colder in California. If it gets below about 70, that's too cold. Yes, I do remember when Duttweiler raced the McLaren, the Turbo Buick. Yeah, the Turbo Buick was that thing was fast. I think, I'm trying to remember, I remember stopping and talking to that guy. Joe Pettit was the crazy one. He was the guy that sat I think he sat in the passenger seat with RJ Gottlieb in Big Red. That's nuts. Being in the passenger seat is just nothing but terrible. Matt Mullen, live feed. Yep, did a live feed tonight because I got to work on my dyno testing so I can do some other videos. And you guys can find out how well this thing ran with a carburetor. Hopefully we'll do the tune port and all the cams and all that stuff. I got to get going. Thanks everybody for showing up. More stuff coming up tomorrow.